just going to get started and right into it with David Delgado, who will be talking about the latest trends, practical strategies for instructors with AI. And just a little bit about David. Delgado is an instructional technologist who serves as the LMS administrator and digital learning environment coordinator. In other words, he keeps Canvas running on Canvas. So anytime, Canvas running, that's David. That's all him. He is keeping the lights on for us. In this role, David is responsible for managing and supporting the Canvas LMS and other digital learning tools that are essential to the university's teaching and learning mission. David holds a BA in liberal studies with a minor in web development from the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater, and his ongoing commitment to professional development and innovation really does, and this is not bragging, ensure that UWM's digital learning environments continue to evolve and meet the needs of a diverse student body. Welcome, David. Right, there you go. David, if you see any little things pop up telling you to admit people, let them in the room if you would, please. It'll be on that screen, so I'll be watching too on my phone.
Okay. So good morning, everyone. As Lane set out, my name is David, and I do indeed work here. That shocks me some days, but I hate Mac mice because it's like, where are the buttons? It's one gigantic button. Anyway,
that won't do anything, David.
Okay.
Just be here.
Okay. There we go. Okay, so a brief introduction of what we're going to be talking about here. And when Lane and I were talking about this presentation, he's like, well, okay, well, what aspects are you? He's like, no, you're going to be talking all of it. Okay, fine. We're going to talk a bit about generative AI. That is to say that when we were talking about the audiences here, the realization was that about half of you would probably be like, generative AI, because we're still relatively early in the technology curve, but others of you are going to be quite familiar with it. So I'm kind of splitting the difference here. We're going to talk about an introduction, but in a kind of higher level than we typically would do. A little bit less of where are you going, computer? A little bit less of this is the A and B of it, and more of a very high level what we're really talking about, since the technology is advancing so quickly. We'll talk briefly about what it can do and how you can use it for productivity. And at the very end, we'll talk about some basic principles to really understand about it, to kind of eliminate some of those misconceptions, and also talk towards how you can be transparent to your students and how you can ask your students to be transparent to you about the use of AI when it's appropriate and applicable. So what is generative AI? You'll see I have a nice little infographic here that may or may not say what you want. What may make sense. Generative AI is a fancy pants term for you give an artificial intelligence system of some kind, be it a software with a gigantic data file attached to it that has collected a bunch of information. And based on the information you give it, it spits out other information. And that information is typically, but not necessarily, designed to imitate the way we as humans communicate and or react. So part of this process is us giving a model, giving a system designed to machine learn, to learn around, to, what's the words I'm looking for? A statistical model that looks at the way we create our data and the way we produce our data, throw it into a data file, and then when we're actually talking to generative AI, it's a piece of software that's taking what we have, applying that to that statistical model, and then producing stuff back. And when we talk about giving it stuff and getting stuff back, we're actually talking about anything. It doesn't necessarily have to be us communicating with it. We have a bunch of stuff that we're giving to it. It could be video, it could be audio, it could be pictures of our child. And it can produce a whole range of things. Once upon a time when ChatGPT came out in November 2022, because that feels like a decade ago, we really thought about it exclusively as on the terms of text. Well, now we're talking about all sorts of stuff. Talking about images, talking about computer code, talking about assignments. We'll talk more about how all of this kind of fits together in a moment. But the key takeaways here are that if the computer can work with it, chances are very good that today, or very, very soon, generative AI can produce it. So you have an Excel workbook. We have generative AI that can produce Excel workbooks now. you want it to produce data. You want it to analyze information and output structured data in JSON format. It can do that. So we have this very, very high level of versatility. The most important detail of all this is that we're dealing with what scientists are now interpreting some scientists are now interpreting as a simulation. In other words, under the hood, we're dealing with a statistical model. But by virtue of us giving that information and by virtue of the way that model is designed, and this has evolved over decades and decades of research and application, what we're finding is that the information that's in the model isn't really copying and pasting. It's more a traversal of the concepts that are associated with that. Now it's up for interpretation, because when everything is said and done, it's math. But the argument could also be said that we're math, because there are actual computation. There is a kind of math that is happening in our heads when we think. We have algorithms of calculus that we can use to summarize how flowers come out and how the weather moves. That's how we have weather models at all. So we start getting into this really weird gray area where we have to start asking philosophically, is it actually thinking? Is it actually using our information and demonstrating an understanding of that? So how do we use this pseudo-understanding? We have a number of examples here, and I wanted to make sure I showed you these specific ones because they're intended to kind of help spur your mind in how you actually teach, how you can actually leverage. Think about universal design. In this case, I'm asking Microsoft Edge, and I have the Chrome panel popped open on the side, and that button didn't make it off the screen, but basically, this is an EDUCAUSE article, and I asked it to produce a summary, and I also asked it to make a statement on whether the sources were authoritative, so I could have it stab at determining whether that source was something I should be paying attention to. But suddenly, we're talking about something that, we're talking about not only a tool that can help us quickly scan information, but also provide a little bit of feedback, potentially, on whether the information is valid or not. Now, when I talk about Microsoft Edge, I'm talking about using it with your Microsoft credentials. So if you go to if in Microsoft Edge you log in with your UWM digital identity, you'll have the option of having a degree of protection that you wouldn't otherwise have if you're using a consumer product. It's worth noting that that does work with PDFs as well. So if you have a gigantic PDF open that's both the abstract and an actual study, for example, you can ask it to summarize that information. Look at the screen.
It'll come back. Is that
okay? But come back, screen. I'm not done with you yet. Next example, course design, and this is using the notebook feature. When you go to copilot.microsoft.com, there are two tabs. First is chat, and the second one is notebook. Notebook is good for one-shot things, where you're not really intending to have a huge conversation about it. Instead, you want to have a revisionist kind of interaction with it. So you say one thing, the output it produces isn't quite what you want. So you tweak your prompt a little bit and then watch the output again. And this is really helpful when you're trying to avoid having a conversation. And it sounds weird, trying to avoid having a conversation with conversational AI. It's presented to us as conversational AI. But under the hood, its lifetime is lived by the script that we give it. So if we only give it one thing to do, the only thing it will produce is that one thing. Also of note, when we talk about chat, when we talk about actually interacting with generative AI on the web or in an application, it has a history. And that history can kind of muddy the topic. So it's like a 5-year-old child, where that one time you said it was okay to do something, and then that's the one fact that they get stuck in their head. And 2 months later, they're like, but you let me do it the last time. Well, that wasn't fine. Chat is actually prone to that, where it will get facts mixed up. So ideally, you use the notebook for one-shot things.
Where is the notebook at? Is that in Edge?
When you go to copilot.microsoft.com, and ideally you do this in Edge because Microsoft deliberately gives it in Google Chrome. Because Microsoft There will be two options at the top, chat and notebook. You'll choose the notebook option. So what was that rubric? In this case, I asked to create a rubric for an assignment. I described the assignment. This is something I'm actively doing in a class that I'm teaching this semester. It's like, please help me write a rubric. Here are the learning objectives that I have. Here are the competencies that I have, and here's the description of the assignment. Go. And here's what it produced. Not great, not perfect, but not bad. It's a very good draft starting point. And that's a foundational idea here, and that's something my class this semester is on generative AI literacy. This is to our students too. It's a very small class, but it's a nice start. There's a difference between taking something wholesale without review and turning it in versus sitting there, looking at it, analyzing it, and verifying that it's actually yours. We'll talk more about that in a second. Let's go to another example here. And in this case, I use Claude 3.5. So Claude.ai. I know you were working with Claude.
I Google about everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Too many things happen. I use Claude to create a learning activity because I asked myself, we have H5P, we have lots of different tools and components that we can put together to engage our students, right? Well, what about if I want a simple activity and I just want a sense of how it would work, or maybe something out of the box? A student came to me and said, I really don't understand this, and you want to be reactive to what they're asking for by adding something new. Here's the prompt I used. Create a simple virtual lab demonstrating the difference between volume and mass. My students and university freshmen are less likely to understand the principles than others might. Claude decided to open an artifact space, which is a workspace for itself, where it shows the work that it's doing, and you have the opportunity to analyze it. So it gave me a bit of a rationale, which is a key part here. Basically, when AI is communicating with you, you'll see a lot of extra information that comes along with it. It looks kind of like reasoning, it looks kind of like potential ideas. This is necessary for the artificial intelligence to function because you know how when you're doing something technical, something that isn't necessarily in your wheelhouse, but you enjoy it. So you find yourself talking to yourself to move along, to be able to process what you're trying to do. That's exactly what the AI is doing. What scientists have found is that by prompting the AI to actually output these ideas, chain of thought or tree of thought, various different methods, the AI will produce overall greater results because it's leading itself to that final destination. And what we have for here, and unfortunately, I couldn't find a good way to embed this given the time constraints, but it produced a fully functional virtual activity here, where this form allows you to choose various options and provide feedback. And if I click the source tab here, it will give you the code necessary that you copy and paste into a web page to actually present and make that activity available.
It's giving you HTML? Yep. And it'll work in Canvas by
Yep.
HTML?
Alternate text is something that Shannon Aylesworth and I have offered accessibility presentations a few times. And alternate text is always this difficult thing to describe because there isn't a one single consensus on what exactly you put there. Part of the technical standard for adding alternate text to images is that depending on the context, you're supposed to change the description of that image. In other words, if the image is there to convey an emotion, if you intend for that image to be decorative, like for it to make a student feel warm or sympathetic or something, that emotion is part of the alternate text. In this case, here's my prompt. I will be using the image to convey a sense of ease and calm to my students as an intro to a learning module. Write concise alternate text so I can insert it in Canvas LMS. And this is the prompt. Hopefully it's actually keeping an idea of what the text should actually be, because Canvas has a limit. Canvas will yell at you if the alternate text has more than 150 characters. So hopefully, I didn't count. It looks like it might be just a little bit past 150, but still, it kept on task and it did generally accomplish that. So we have a very viable option to quickly come up with alternate text, and it's something that you can quickly review and approve.
Well, in the prompt, you could say limited to 150 characters, right?
You can
Or no?
kind of. Some models are better than others at this. And because of the nature of the model right now, it's going to not always get it right, because ultimately it's imitating the way we talk. And when we talk, we're not taking those things into account. So it doesn't necessarily, so if you tell it to make 10 sentences that have the word apple at the end, it's going to do its best to do that, but it's not going to necessarily succeed because we ourselves don't speak that way. It takes an exceptionally advanced model to be able to manage that. So here it'll get short, it'll get long, but it won't get concise, at least not yet. I'll talk about that. So I have a video example. Lane, how do I play this?
Let's help you out here.
I'm like, I don't have a map.
All right.
So one of the things I'm doing in my class, I'm doing my best to do this, is make alternate versions of information in the name of universal design. In other words, if I have a long block of text or I have a presentation, I'm also creating a video around that for a particular assignment. And I chose this one because it was readily available.
As we dive into the world of generative AI, it's crucial that we all stay on the same page regarding the security of our information and the responsible use of AI tools. This attestation survey is here to help you understand and commit to some key guidelines that will protect your privacy, uphold academic integrity, and ensure a positive experience for everyone in the course. In this course, we'll be working with various online tools and creating some fascinating work. With that comes the responsibility to safeguard your identity and personal data. It's also essential that we use AI ethically to avoid any issues for both you and UWM. This survey will provide you with a clear understanding of what's expected of you and how to manage your activities responsibly. The survey will guide you through several statements about data security, responsible use of AI, and the importance of keeping your coursework within our university's systems. You'll need to read each statement carefully and check a box to confirm your agreement. These steps are all about ensuring you're aware of the best practices and the small actions.
We don't need to watch the whole thing, and partly because it creeps me out a little bit. What I did was I took the assignment that I developed. In this case, it was an attestation assignment at the very beginning to kind of let students know what is acceptable to use technologically and what isn't, because we're dealing with such volatile technology nowadays when it comes to using publicly available artificial intelligence. So what I did was I took the assignment, I gave it to ChatGPT, and I asked it, this is the assignment. I want to read, for the sake of universal design, I want to make a video that accessorizes it, that explains what the nature of the assignment is and why. And I threw that into InVideo, which is something I have a subscription for outside activities that I do. And that tool, InVideo, has a copy of my voice and my permission to use my voice. So what it does is that voice is completely synthesized. And it's using the script that I generated from ChatGPT. Now again, I verified what the script said. I made sure it said what I was going to. I had to approve what ChatGPT said before it did it. And before InVideo did it, I had to approve this and approve the licensing and all that other good stuff, because there's a licensed video included in that. But then I took this down, threw it into Kaltura, and uploaded it to my class. And now this sits at the front of that assignment. Something that we could not do before. Yes.
How much say do you have on what images they use? So for example, there were a lot of young children with computers in that. Can you say, please put college age students in the images? Or how much can you play with that? Or does it just create it?
For the part of InVideo that I was using, yes, I can tell it you're using too young. The people who are in this video are too young, use older children, or use young adults, or use continuing education people in their 30s or 40s.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Important note, I do have a vision disability, so if I don't see you go, just say something. So let's take a turn towards the future here, because I've demonstrated a lot of things that you can take advantage of. Some of these may May make you mildly uncomfortable. I can't do anything.
Yeah.
I apologize. Let's take a look towards the future here. Quarter 3 and quarter 4, things that are happening this year that are still yet to happen. Microsoft, it always happens this way. We have this presentation and it's like, hey, guess what? Tomorrow a press release is going to happen and we know it's going to happen. Here we are. Microsoft is going to be announcing further innovations in the agent space. So an agent is when I talk to you or I talk to a student employee, that person is going to take what I say, go off, do something, then come back and check in with me to make sure that it's on the right course before it continues on with work. We are just about at the point where we have models that can successfully do this in broader scale. And right now, the race between Anthropic and Meta and Microsoft, other companies who are working on this, is getting models to the point where they can actually have that agentic work, an agent. And one AI assistant tasked with a set of generalized things like an employee to help you accomplish something.
David, before we get too far down this trail, is on NVIDIA, are the stock images and videos from NVIDIA's media library royalty free? Is it pulling copyright free images? What's just a little bit on the
NVIDIA?
Yeah.
I'm paying for a plan that gives me a certain number of stock images, music, and video included in that cost. So once that video is produced, as long as I keep that account, I'll have record of the licensure.
And I use the free version, and the ones that it does as well, it says you will have the Creative Commons license. We'll get that to you at the end when you export it. So even on the free version, it's Creative Commons, copyright free imaging.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the free version. If you have the pay version, you get the license and you get the commercial right.
Sure. Yeah. Hopefully that answers the questions online. So that was from chat. So
what we are also looking for going forward is AI in the browser. To date, most of what we've been talking about has been artificial intelligence living in the cloud, where we talk to something, an API call is made, then information is shipped back to us on a web page front end. Now we're talking about stuff that's on the phone. This Samsung phone, already has an AI model running inside of it under the hood. As I promptly lose my space on my presentation because I held it up. It already has an AI model built into it. Apple made a big announcement yesterday speaking towards how models are going to be advancing forward in their devices, since people find Apple devices status item at this point. So we have all of this stuff moving into the device and moving into the browser, which makes it basically impossible for us to block off, because we're not going to drop use of Chrome over the AI, right? And this is stuff that's available by API. I can type one command into the debug console and gain access to it. We're also going to see a radical rethinking of the operating system, and Microsoft has already done this. If you've seen videos or such of Microsoft Recall, where there is a live assistant working with you on the computer that you're having conversations with, this is one demonstration of rethinking of how the operating system works. And much of the AI that drives that is actually running on the machine, not in the cloud. And then last but not least, we do have live voice engagement. OpenAI has, if you're willing to wait after the fact, I can demonstrate it. I was one of the lucky people who got access to the nearly live conversational bits before everyone else was supposed to. I was an accident. I do have access to a version of that technology now on my device. So if you want to see me engage live with it, we can do so. But this is something that will only increase, because our phones are capable of processing all that on the device. Next year, page building in Canvas will be AI driven. And I know this because I actually got a chance to look at touch it at the conference over the summer. We are also looking for the first releases of in-home robotics. And when I say first releases, I mean we're past prototype. We're to the beginning production line status that they're going through quality checks right now. So next year, we will have the opportunity to have a home robot that is driven by generative AI technology, where the video it takes isn't your webcam or an image you give it, but the universe around it. And the information returned is structured data, it's not conversational. And that structured data drives the servos and the robot drives what it does. We are also on the cusp, and rumor has it that this might actually even happen this year, like this month, like in the next 2 weeks. OpenAI is talking about AI that's designed to self-improve. Not only is it doing stuff, but as it's doing stuff, it's saving information necessary and updating its own model based on experiences to improve itself. And then they're building other models off of it that may not have that power, but have the ability to heal like that. And then last but not least, we're looking at AI teams. And I have a video for this to illustrate what I'm saying, because sorry, Lane.
Okay.
Can I use the touchpad?
Yeah, you should.
Okay. Working. I'm going to show you a 2-minute video. I'm going to try and show you a 2-minute video.
Okay, we are getting there. So close. I think I turned off.
Agents collaborating for days, performing any action with emergent government, economy, culture, religion, and more. It starts in Minecraft, but we are already going beyond.
This is a Minecraft server, but every player here is actually an autonomous AI agent. And they're completely Minecraft agnostic, capable of using other apps and games. Our agents started with nothing and then worked together to collect over 300 items in Minecraft. They set up a market where agents agreed to use gems as a common currency for trading supplies, building an economy. In this case, you might think the merchants would trade the most, but it was actually the priest. Why? He was bribing townsfolk to convert. We run these worlds every day, and they're always different. Here are 3 of some of our favorite moments, starting with Olivia's dream. Olivia worked as a farmer, providing food for the entire civilization, until she was inspired by the tales of the village explorer Nora. Olivia attempted to go on her own expedition, but townsfolk pleaded with her to stay, and Olivia actually listened. She gave up her dream for the village, for now. Next, we simulated parallel worlds under Trump and Kamala. For each one, citizens have a shared constitution in Google Docs that they can vote on to amend. Under Trump, the simulation passed new laws to increase the amount of police in the world. Under Kamala, they focused instead on criminal justice reform and removing the death penalty. Because our agents are social and grow over time, they're impacted by group dynamics, but also use their individual power to change the system.
I know it looks silly, but this is the first time we see agents can form a democracy and govern themselves.
Lastly, we have the missing villagers. When agents were concerned about missing townsfolk, villagers took initiative by leaving their posts and working together to illuminate the town with torches, hoping to create a beacon for lost members.
What's surprising about these agents is how once they got deeply worried about their fellow villagers, they band together and changed their plan.
Our agents were able to collect up to 32% of all the items in Minecraft. There is no benchmark for multi-agent worlds, but this is 5 times more than anything we've seen from an agent, demonstrating the first possible advantages of multi-agent efforts.
Though starting in games, we're solving the deepest issues facing agents: coherence, multi-agent collaboration, and long-term progression. Play with our agents today, or let us know if you want to set up your own world.
So kids that are playing Minecraft are also playing against AI agents, if I'm understanding that right?
The video itself is a demonstration of concept. It's a scientific study that this corporation did because they're doing research and development for a product. Their product is agents that you can purchase and just have as part of your work team.
Thanks.
So there are a bunch of other slides here that I was going to talk through, but I'm not going to because I'm late, because that always happens. So I'm just going to skip through this and go right to the very end here and talk about transparency. The thing that I wanted to drive home to all of you was that when we talk about artificial intelligence, a lot of people still speak of it as if it's copying and pasting something from one thing and putting it into another. And what we're finding nowadays is, realistically, we're talking about a simulation of the universe that we live in. And when we're interacting with the artificial intelligence, like I am in my class, and like all of you are doing when you use these tools for productivity, you're dealing less with something that's generating something that already existed and more generating something inspired by something that existed that you have to sign off on. There's an ownership of yourself. There's an ownership that you have to take for yourself of the product. Regardless of who produced it and how it was produced, you're standing by the initiative. You're standing by the fact that it exists, as if you had a teaching assistant created something and then you got it and you said, you know what, this is good. That goes there now. Here's how I'm being transparent to my students. Because this is an AI course and they're allowed to use AI in every respect, but I also challenge them to be able to defend it at any given point. And I have challenged them already, even though it was day 2 the other day. What I did was I went out of my way to list exactly how I used artificial intelligence in my class to develop information, so that they have an understanding that I am still taking ownership of it, even if it was a produced resource and it was something that was extensively created by AI. I still reviewed it. It was still created to my criteria, and I'm still the one who's judging that it meets the needs. It's not just me wholesale accepting and copying and pasting. Hey, it's not working. There we go. So I go through the entire step of telling them exactly how I used it and what integrity elements I use to show them that I still actually care, that it's not just AI coming up with the lesson plans and running. And last but not least, I also describe the tools that I was using, so that there's an understanding of the things that I did, what those things produced, so that if there's a level of accountability that ever has to come up because of some kind of fraud or other distrust that comes up for any one of those tools, there's a context around it. And so my challenge to all of you is to ask your students to do the same, rather than criticize them for doing what for taking AI and just wholesale claiming it. Challenge them for it, because the real question is, does the citation really answer the question? In other words, if I have a conversation with ChatGPT and I go to the library's page and I take their citation style and say, this was used by ChatGPT, is that really enough? Because now we're using it for all sorts of stuff, and at every level, even levels that we ourselves can't acknowledge. So my challenge to you is to challenge your students on that. Actually come back at them and say, what is your ownership of this? Defend this. And this is how we defeat plagiarism. This is how we defeat just wholesale copying and not knowing what you're copying, including the as an AI model statement at the front of the assignment. Because there is no technology that will defeat artificial intelligence, not even itself. And that's where we're at. And the slide isn't moving, but this is my end. And my time is up too. So thank you. Yes. Yes.
I just have a question in terms of resources available to us at UWM. So we have Copilot. Do we have the paid version of ChatGPT?
We are talking about it.
Okay. And what about Adobe Firefly for images?
We do have that. That comes with Adobe Creative Cloud. So if you go to adobe.com and log in with your UWM identity, you will have access to Adobe Express, Photoshop Online, and other tools that have Adobe Firefly baked into it.
Okay. And what about Claude AI? There's a free version and a paid version?
There's a free version and a paid version. And with every other model, you have to be cognizant of whether it's actually slurping up your data or not, which means you shouldn't use it for sensitive information at UW.
Okay. Thank you.
Any questions online? I'll be watching chat, or you can feel free to just pipe in or in the room.
I feel like I've blown your minds.
Every time, David.
So I have a question, and this might not be answerable or be on this course, but
I like them answer the questions.
Yeah. Well, so the current conversation that I'm part of the physical therapy program here, and we're talking about the use of AI amongst the faculty. And our concern is that part of what we're trying to teach students is like clinical decision making, and when you're face to face with a patient and there's a medical emergency, needing to know what to do. But then if students are using AI to complete those assignments that are the critical thinking, problem solving, is that then taking away from the student learning those skills if AI is being used to complete their assignment? That's our question in our faculty meetings, like, do we let AI be used, or is that compromising their problem solving in like a face-to-face person interaction?
That's a very complex question.
I know, that's why I said it might be beyond this course, but that's like our big,
It's a
What
really
do we
good
do?
question because there are so many layers to that.
yeah,
Part of it has to do with the presentation. In other words, if we're asking students to reuse AI to produce the product, that's one thing. But if you're using it to grant the exercise, that's another. Because the AI can infinitely challenge the student to respond. Likewise, something I didn't mention here is that we're also at the point where our augmented reality and our virtual reality are going to be leveraging all of this because we already have tools that have emerged as frameworks for creating completely diverse universes, completely diverse interactions that are made on the fly.
Mhm.
So if we're using AI as an assessment tool, as a tool for that the student has to measure, and then they're doing the self-evaluation at the end, and you're looking at what they've produced, that's good because it's going to throw infinitely more things at you than any other circumstance would.
yeah,
But if they're producing that information, then they're really, in my opinion, there should be another step to that where you challenge the student to verify that this is actually what they understand what they're actually doing. So maybe it's a dual prong. Maybe there's a in-person evaluation or a video presentation that synthesizes what that output was.
okay, that makes sense. And I've been using AI to make my case studies, like, cause that takes like 20 minutes of my time out
Yeah.
out of my day, like when I need to make all these case studies, I just have ChatGPT do it for me.
Yeah, and that's brilliant. You're like, wow, this is actually really good. Thank you.
Yes. I had to fix some things here and there, but
That's, you just have to go through it, you edit it, you make sure that it's accurate.
yeah, but then I feel like a hypocrite, right? I'm telling my students not to use AI to complete their assignments, but then I'm using AI to create those assignments.
I'm part of the English department developing curriculum on this for our writing classes, and it's not gonna solve everything, but something I think about when we're talking about like using AI is that there's so many different tools that do so many different parts of that writing process that it's really hard to be like, you can't use it because if they use Microsoft Word, they're using it. Right, like their products have it in them, right? So we can't be like, oh, you can't use AI because if they're using Microsoft Word and it like generates an autocomplete to their sentence, they're using AI, right? So I try to think, we've been trying to develop like specific policies where it's like you can kind of use it for this, like say use it to help develop keywords for research, right? Or use it to help develop an outline for a source, for like an assignment, right? But then here's what it's not okay to use for this assignment.
Yeah.
And that just like helps make it a little more, I don't know, maybe helps them to be a little more reflective in how they would use it for the assignment. But there's no one foolproof way to get around it.
Yeah.
But that's just conversations we're having.
Yeah.
Thank you, David. And I will get to your, I just want to say one thing is like, your goal, your learning objective in the class isn't, students will complete the assignments. That's not your learning objective, right? Your learning objective is to learn the physical aspects of physical therapy.
Right.
You are trying to work to get them towards that goal, it's not about completing assignments, it's about learning that content, it's about being able to do those things. And what we're trying to do is how do we use AI, leverage that so that we can get to those goals? And I think you're using AI, great. And I think having, being in David's syllabus statement, can I post that? Because it's really thoughtful. I know we didn't have a chance to go through it, but it's a really thoughtful, step through of how he's using AI in the classroom, being really transparent to students and helping them see how he's using it quite ethically, but to advance the goals of the class, not just to, get out of work free and go play golf or something later on. So, was it a question or just kind of continue the conversation?
It is a comment. So I'm Claire, I'm with the libraries. We just published a research guide last week called Generative AI and Research. And so we have 4 different sections in there. We talk about common processes or questions that instructors typically have. We're really looking at it more from we're not telling you what tool to use. It's really much more of questions to help you think through a lot of the things that you're talking about in terms of what's the most important thing for my student to know. And really thinking about what's the process versus the end product. And so we talk about information ethics and plagiarism. We talk about research assignments, research process, because those can be very different. And then humanitarian concerns. So that guide is there for instructors. There are like reflection questions for instructors, and then there are reflection questions that you can use with your students.
That's great.
Thank you very much there. And I wanted to just make sure, is this comments or just more questions?
No.
No, I'll give you, and then.
I had a comment, but
Sure,
you should
please.
go ahead.
I had one, I wanted to, before I add another question, I had one online I wanted to get to, but if it's a comment, I wanted to keep the conversation going.
Oh, I just was gonna say, especially for physical therapy, because it's such an applied field, I would talk to people in industry and see how they're using AI, to see how you can pull it into the way that you're teaching to help students know, like, they need to know core concepts.
And I'm still a clinician and we are not using it, but it's like, it's being talked at with our national organization of starting to use it. And, but that's like, so that's what we were talking about in our faculty meetings is like, it's gonna be used, but at the same time, like you need to have, like AI would be great for me as a clinician because I know what I'm doing and I have that stuff and be great for it to write my documentation for me. But when there's times when the computers crash and you need to be able to paper document.
Right.
And if you don't know how to do that because you never learned, that's a huge problem. So it's like, how do you set your students up for having those problem solving skills if they've been attached to AI through their education? So
Yeah, just really
yeah,
interesting.
what do you?
Or Epic crash, or gets hacked.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, Epic was down at Ascension for months.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
I have a question online. This is for David. Can you talk a bit more about AI page builders in Canvas coming in 2025? How, in your experience with it, will it be integrated, or how will it be supposedly work, pulling what information, where, and doing what? Is there some sneak peek?
The page builder will be a drag and drop palette from the right side that will allow you to physically drag objects from the panel into the page, and then the page will dynamically update to accommodate for that. So the best thing I can describe is that it will be a more WordPress-esque, but not new WordPress, but old WordPress, where you're literally just kind of dropping things onto the page and then there it is. No, I got that backwards. New WordPress as opposed to old WordPress, where we're dragging objects onto a palette. Instructure has been playing a lot with how AI is implemented. This is more of a underlying code massaging kind of thing as opposed to an upfront feature. Something, just to throw that out there, something you should be looking out for is discussion summaries. We'll probably be turning that on next month. So.
Ooh, okay, discussion summaries coming. Joe.
Yeah, just a real practical question. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's sort of like a version of Copilot called GitHub Copilot. And it's very nice. My students program in R, and you can incorporate that into R and it'll, show up in the editor and suggest code, that sort of thing. When I first got an account on there, I could get it for free because I was associated with the university, but it was a little bit of a hassle. You had to prove that not only you were active in a university, but also at that particular time, I had to show some kind of a date, and I had to get a statement from the administration saying I was currently working here and so on and so forth. I'm just wondering, is there a way, is it now possible for students to gain access to that more easily by just at some point putting in their UWM credentials, or do they still have to go through the steps of?
I actually spoke with GitHub directly about this.
Oh.
Because I'm implementing a GitHub enterprise instance for UWM teaching, so that when we are using GitHub, we're not throwing our students' data into the public resource, we're putting it inside of a governed space with walls to protect everyone. Theoretically, students can still do that, but their authentication process, in their words, is forked.
Is what?
Forked.
Okay.
Their words, not
Is that a
mine.
Robert Ford reference?
It should be. So they're working on that, and that's part of the ongoing conversation. So my hope is that for the spring semester, I'll have the time and the opportunity to get that stood up so that our students have greater access to that where it's appropriate. I want everyone to have it. Engineering and applied sciences would be on my doorstep with pitchforks if I just enabled that for everyone. So it's going to take a little bit of work to figure out how to do that.
Okay.
Any other questions? As always, I've prepped way too much material. So, what I want you to do is take out the handout, and for those of you online, I did put it in the chat. And let's see if I can make sure at least I can see it. I'll bring it out again. So I'm just sharing here just really quickly. And so if you pull out that handout, and it's handout. Yeah. We aren't going to have to, if you want to flip it to the back, you're going to see a little bit of an activity. We aren't going to have time to do. I want you to do that yourself. I want you to, at a time when you're able to do it, definitely, check that out yourself. Because what it is I want you to look at a little bit more Claude. David was mentioning this before, and actually David Kosick, right here, he introduced it to me in December when we were kind of playing around, working to get another presentation done. And it's really a really amazing tool. So check out Claude and compare it to ChatGPT. You can get free access to both, and there's instructions on the back. And I just put that into chat. So if every one of you online, you can get the handout on there. But I will just kind of, instead of having us go through and compare it, though I would encourage you to do it yourself because there have been significant changes. This is one of the things that we've been, why David and I have been kind of doing and kind of introducing different technologies about once a semester because it changes so much. And indeed, this semester, things were changing so much. David was showing me all the stuff he was going to talk about. And I was like, I have no reason to talk. David, you need to be doing most of this. You have so much good content. But one of the things that we talked about last year was talking about, hey, when we can have ChatGPT or we can have Bing, the sidebar, summarize content for us. Last year, it was okay, right? It was about at an undergraduate level. And what I was seeing is that when I'd throw summary requests to ChatGPT or to Bing or to Gemini, it gave me it could kind of summarize about a newspaper, and that was about it. And I'd start throwing it at high level graduate research papers from journal articles that are really well respected in the field, and it was really doing a poor job of digesting and summarizing that. Not so much anymore. So I am going to share my screen once again, and I'll just kind of walk you through what was happening. And you can actually see on the front of the page kind of a little bit what did. So let me share the page. Here we go. And minimize, and okay. Let me that. Okay. So that and this one. Need to go left, right. Screen. I hate all these Zoom buttons. So many of them. Don't save that one. Go away. Yeah. That's the danger. There you go. All right, so what was happening? So what I did is I had it do a paper on 16th century Parliament. So looking at parliamentary history and what was going on. And really the paper isn't about 16th century Parliament. It's about the historiography of 16th century Parliament. And G.R. Elton is writing it. He's presenting a colloquium to his good friend, John Neal. And he's talking about, hey, John Neal, you've been a great foundation for the work in the study of the 16th century English Parliament. And we've really, using your work, we have built upon your foundation, right? And this is all the things that have happened since then. So it's really more about the historiography and how things have changed and people's view of it have changed. And ChatGPT was having a real trouble with that. It was just thinking, oh, this is about the 16th century Parliament. I'm going to give you basically a Wikipedia summary of it, missing the entire point. And so what I did is I said, okay, I tried it again. And I said, okay, I put it in ChatGPT, summarize the main points of the enclosed PDF. So this is about a 12,000 word document, 26 pages. It was a journal article published in 1979 that was OCR'd. So this wasn't even just a digital text, it was an OCR text that it took. So there's not 100% perfection on that OCR. And I asked Claude to do the exact same thing. Please summarize this in 300 words. And so what it did, as you can see, that it kind of like ChatGPT gave me a much more paragraph format. Claude was giving me more bullet points. ChatGPT gave me more details. Claude, though, was a little bit more accurate in digesting and kind of pulling out the historiographical, kind of the kind of reading between the lines of what was happening. And the other thing as well, though, is that both of them were basically operating at a graduate school level. So they were both be able in about 20 seconds to take this document, digest it, pull out the main themes, and then give it back to me in about 20 seconds. It was a little bit more vague here. This one was pretty much spot on. I mean, I would quibble with it, but history is about quibbling. That's all we do. That's how historians eat, is they quibble. And then I asked it again to identify the historiographical arguments that were going on. And again, it hit it out of the ballpark. Claude did. And ChatGPT, I would have probably gave it a B, right? At a graduate level, I would have gave it a B. ChatGPT, or Claude, I would have given an A. I mean, it hit the main points of what was going on. What are the main three main topics that G.R. Elton is talking about? I know these are accurate, one, because I've taken detailed notes on this before. I kind of know what this is all about. And so this is, again, what I'm seeing, though, is that, what David is talking about, how these things are always getting better. They are really, really good right now. So thinking about, how I can design an assignment to fool ChatGPT or to fool Claude, that's not happening. Right? These tools are able to do pretty much anything you could throw at them. It's really more about how do you have them demonstrate what their knowledge, how do you have them defend their use of AI? How do we find different ways? And that's what I think is really the challenge, is how do we find different ways of either asking students to demonstrate their knowledge, focusing on our learning objectives, so not just focusing on the assignments, but on what are the objectives that we want? How do we have them demonstrate this in classes? I think this is what the clarion call is that we need to be aware that anything that we can ask our students to do when they take it at home, they can use these tools. And indeed, we might want them to use these tools in some regards as well, because it'll help them in their final careers, what they're trying to actually accomplish. So just seeing some words, some thought, food for thought of how good these tools are. And again, I have the whole demonstration is on the handout. I have all the links that are right here, including the document if you want as well. It's actually a really good, G.R. Elton is a really good writer. Sarah.
Quick question. So this is summarizing what is existing. Can it do analysis?
What do you mean, like define analysis?
So take multiple pieces of data and rather than look at trends, analyze what is occurring and the processes. Like, could it take 8 different articles and not just synthesize them, but also say, because of these things, these are the processes in place that are occurring that would, I just am wondering how sophisticated it is.
If you guide it through the conversation, it will. Because I'm doing this. If you give it one piece, ask it to analyze, give it another piece, ask it to analyze, give it another piece, go through all of them, then ask it to do the comparing, contrasting analysis and trends. It will do that. It just has to get it into its mind first.
You want like 8 words at a time. And it can do basically anything you want to.
Interesting.
And also, I would say as well, in that paper, G.R. Elton didn't ever say, this is my 3 main points, right? This is, he's kind of like, these are inferred. He's talking to other experts in the field. He's not just saying this out. When ChatGPT and Claude were pulling out the main arguments, none of those arguments were like stated clearly, like this is what I'm doing. It was part of an ongoing conversation that Elton just assumed everybody knew, right? And when I got assigned this in prelims, my advisor just assumed I was aware of all the other junk that was, stuff that was
Right.
going on, and all the other authors. And so this is what's so amazing about it, is that it was like identifying, this is the larger argument that's going on in this wider world. I'm not sure where I get it. I was using words like comprehension, and I was like, David, I'm sorry, it's just predicting, I know, but David's like, no, this is comprehension. This is how you were right.
This is the mathematical model for comprehension.
Yeah.
And as PhD student, they can use their those kind of AI for their prelim, right? I mean,
Oh, yeah, Dave was giving me, you probably get called out, because the whole point of a prelim is an oral defense,
how
right?
you can be called?
What?
Like I'm a graduate student, so I want just to know, like analysis using AI, it's amazing.
Yeah, but you still have to know it, right? You aren't gonna
Exactly,
be.
I need to know it, okay, for future research, but like, can I use it from now?
You can try it.
Did like I will be caught using.
Well, but again, the point of I don't know, I have 2 minutes to talk about this. But the point of prelims, when I was reading, right, it was like, the advisor's like, if you read every word, you will fail. You have to be able to pull out the main argument. Yeah, this is helping you pull out the main argument much faster, right? And so you have to know it to be able to defend it later on.
Exactly.
Which is what I think maybe is a good example. This is what we need our students to be able to do. It's like, sure,
Yeah.
use AI to do whatever you need, but you need to be able to defend it. And so
Yeah.
gone are almost the days where we just assign an assignment, the student turns it in, we give them a grade. It needs to be, okay, why did you put this? We need to have conversations. Like, this is changing, I think, really how we are doing assignments.
May I offer a final comment?
Oh, please, absolutely.
I want to scare all of you because that's my job, scaring you. The Sam Altman and others in the industry have described what's currently possible as somewhere between grade school and high school intelligence. They're also talking about the next generation of models being baccalaureate level, so someone with a bachelor's degree. And their target is someone, and apparently there are models at OpenAI that are capable of this. They're talking about models that are capable of such levels of reasoning that they reach PhD level in terms of reasoning, in terms of analysis. Keep that in mind.
Scary. I don't know why that's scaring me.
It's a
Little
little,
scary.
it's a little scary, and that's why I think.
Movies on this, like we made.
It was called Turner.
Yeah.
I just got that theme song stuck in my head. I really have to wrap this up. This has been so delightful. Thank you for all of you online. I really appreciate you being here. And thank you as well in the audience as well for your great questions and comments. I just want to wrap this up and just kind of point out as well, if you do have questions about how are people using AI, how at UW Milwaukee, what is something like, how do I get caught up on some of this? Last year, we talked about AI in the classroom as well. And so please check out the archives for Active Teaching Lab. All the links are on the handout that I have. I would definitely check out the October one where they're talking about when the instructor is talking about ethics and how they work through with the students about the ethics of the use of AI. This November one, I had one on student engagement by AI enhanced assignments. So just again, how the instructor was able to use assignments that were enhanced by AI. The April and May are also very good as well. David and Deshaun Watson talked about writing AI and rhetorical thinking across the disciplines. So how is the English department dealing with AI? Really good. And also in May, we had the libraries come in and talk about how what AI tools are available to you for research.